I think the biggest thing for me as I was reading over this, like as a collection, and there's so many beautiful themes in this zine, right? Like about connection and vulnerability and self-worth and all of these amazing themes. But I think the thing that was so present throughout them all was sort of this dichotomy between the urge to like contract, and then you go through these experiences and you find permission to expand. And I think there is something that is very raw but hopeful in every single one of these essays.
Hi, how's it going? How are you doing? Welcome to the podcast that you just chose to listen to. There's so many options and you are here. Good choice. Hopefully good choice. I'm really glad you're here. Thank you so much for tuning in. You're about to hear a conversation with one of my best friends in the world. We've been friends for over a decade, and her name is Simi. She's here because A, she's one of my favorite people to talk to, and also because I wrote a zine. I wrote the zine and it's called Pivot, and I'm really excited to tell you about it. And Simi is a character in it. I mentioned her in several of the essays, and it also features an essay that we wrote together. I talk about it in this a little bit throughout, a decent amount throughout, and we just have a conversation about our friendship, about changing media and spanning time. So here's that conversation with Simi. If you want to know how to get the zine, well, you're in luck because I'm about to tell you. If you are a paid subscriber of my Substack, then congratulations, a zine will be coming to you, or actually a link will be coming to your email, and it will have a Google form attached to that link, and you'll just write your address and I'll send you one in the mail. If you're not a paid subscriber, you can become one, and then you'll get that link and I'll send you one in the mail. But really, check out my Substack, and if you like it, you'll like the zine. If you don't like it, hard no on liking the zine. So don't worry, but it's there for you, and I'm excited. This episode is just us having a conversation about why I decided to do this, and the spoiler, it's because I couldn't do much else with my broken leg, making it impossible for me to drive or walk. So I made this, and I'm really excited for you to read it. Two of my really close friends, Eli and Captain, made the cover, and I don't know why that just made me emotional saying that. It's been a challenging summer, and making this helped me a lot. So here's me talking to Simi about it before I start crying. I spammed you with a plethora of voice notes saying about 18 ideas for how we could talk today, and inviting you to come back 100 more times. And I really hope we do all of that and can talk more right after this and tomorrow and the next day. And I can preferably come to visit you and have you here, because truly you're one of my favorite people to talk to in the world and one of my longest friends. And I haven't gotten to talk to you in a while. And so you gotta love podcasting for making it happen.
I love it. It is the best reason to catch up, and I'm a yes for all of the things. Phone calls, visits, all of it. I can't wait until we get to do all of those things.
Okay, great. Yeah, you know how my brain is with just like 18 ideas at once, and then we spiral into, and I was thinking about you so much this morning because I was so excited to talk, and I was thinking about how much time our friendship spans and how rare that is, and how it also doesn't feel like that. It feels like a blink of an eye. I mean, it feels like I've known you forever, and I have known you forever. I'm pretty sure this is our 10-year anniversary of friendship, right? Because didn't we meet in
Happy
2014?
anniversary.
That seems right. I'm pretty sure. And
I
I
love
mean,
it.
we've maybe even spoken about this on the podcast because you have been on this podcast many times, but it hasn't been for a long time. That's one of the many reasons I was hoping you would come back. And you have an incredible podcast now that I got to be on, the first guest, right?
You were the very first guest, and it was so special. I mean, I think about, over the last decade and our friendship, and during that time, like you are the reason why I listen to podcasts. Like you really taught me what a podcast was, and you got me into listening to podcasts. And now I feel like, it fills up so much of my time and it's always in my ear, and I have you to thank for that. And I also am so excited about this conversation today because you are literally the person who taught me what a zine was. Like, I did not know what that was until you taught me about it. So I've just learned, I mean, these are two examples of things that I've learned from you over the last decade, but you've taught me so much. And I just think about how one of your many gifts is that you do all of the researching and sleuthing and searching and learning and all of that. And then you curate the best of the best for people. And I think that's why your podcast is so incredible because it's, curated conversations by you. You've done that so much for me and our friendship, like really bringing me new ideas and new things to be interested in. And it's like the best possible scenario because I trust you and you have such incredible taste and you're so creative and have such an eye for the future. And I feel like you've saved me so much time by just bringing me the best of the best over the years. And with your zine, it's like you're curating all of these beautiful essays that you've written over the years to bring together for people. And that's such a gift that you have.
Oh my gosh, I love you so much. Thank you for saying that. And it's such an honor. I mean, I think with the podcasting piece, many people say that to me it speaks to our age a little bit, I think, because now that would never be the case if I started a podcast today. Like people already knew what they were. But back then in 2013, when I was doing it, that was just how it was. People were like, what would you, is that an iTunes or like, how do you, and they thought it was special just by nature of it being on iTunes, which as you know now, like there's no gatekeeper, like anybody can be on there, but it gave it some validity just because it was new and people didn't really understand. So part of it is just beginner's luck, but I'm grateful because I do really love the medium and I love seeing more people start I've been telling you for years you should start a podcast because I knew you would be really great at it and I had a feeling that you would really love it. So I'm happy to be even a tiny part of that. And then what you said about the zine or how you just brought up the zine is so perfect and so you, because here we are, we have about 45 minutes. The clock is ticking already. We had 45 minutes about 5 minutes ago. And then you bring up the thing that we're here to talk about, which is this zine that has, like you said, some essays that I wrote. And you are not only a character in several of them, you are in them by name, but you also wrote one with me, the last one about friendship, you co-wrote with me. But what you just did there, bringing that up, reminds me of my book launch party in New York, where you are early pregnant. It was more than 8 years ago because you were pregnant with Osh, who's about to turn 8. And you were so sick. And, here we are at this book party, but like nobody really like knew it was the book party. Like it was just very, very crowded, very un-COVID safe in a very, very small juice place. And you had the intuition, like you often do, that you're like, I feel like we should like at the birthday party when it's just a bunch of people at a bar, but then if somebody brings a cake, then it's like you're united as a party just for that like song. And you stood up on a chair and you're like, so Katie wrote a book. Can we cheers? And I was just so happy that you did that. And, you did it again today at this podcast zine launch party that we're having.
I love nothing more than getting to come to your launch parties, both virtual and in person. I mean, also for me, coming to your launch party in New York City was just so special to see everything you had worked so hard for. You were and continue to be such an inspiration to me. I wish there was a cooler way to say cutting edge, but I'm not that cool, so I can't think of a cooler way to say
I
cutting
think it's
edge.
cool. I think it's kind of 2000s,
Okay, I love it.
millennium.
I am a millennial, so that would make sense why I'd be using that language. But I feel like you always have been since I've known you. You continue to be so cutting edge in the things that you're interested in. And I feel like, podcasting is a great example. You were so ahead of the curve. Even like the topics that you've talked about on your podcast, from being like early interested in wellness when that was very cutting edge, and then everybody, jumped aboard that. And as your podcast has continued to evolve, like the guests that you have on, the things that you're talking about, it's so cutting edge. But like journaling was one of those things. Like you really were at like the forefront of that being mainstream, and to get to come to that launch party and see everything you had worked so hard for, and just to see the way that you bring something into your community or any room that you walk into. And because you're such a curious person, and because you have such an energy about the things that you share, that you choose to share, like people get excited about them. I think, journaling should really thank you for,
Oh my God.
for like, your
For the
book. Like I
PR.
feel like, yeah, that did a lot of things for journaling.
I don't know about that. It's no Julia Cameron morning pages, but yeah, it's so funny. And thank you for saying all of that. And you're so encouraging. And I'm just beaming. And I think the further you get from something, and I'm sure I'm curious if you feel this way about your book and about the different projects that we make, but and you know this about me, and I'm learning it the older I get too. Like I get bogged down in how something looks or how something is perceived. And I'm so happy I chose journaling as a topic because it's free, it's accessible, it's approachable for my only book. And it could have gone either way at that time, as you know. And like in this zine, I talk about this. It's kind of a theme of like how down the rabbit hole I got. I think we both went quite far down the rabbit hole of wellness and wellness culture pretty early on, and then kind of opened our eyes to see like, oh, some of these things can be really useful, but also to not take it too seriously and be too dogmatic about it. That's like a huge theme of my 20s. And this zine, I should say, is called Pivot. And basically, I wrote this column for this magazine called The Fullest. And I was writing for them for a couple of years. And then I got to have a column called Pivot about navigating the tumultuous decade of my 20s. And, the Saturn return time, I was like at the end of my 20s. And I wrote monthly for like 2 years, and I broke my leg and my ankle a couple months ago. And I was going through some of these pieces of writing and noticing these themes of like, wow, I learned a lot, but also I'm still learning these same lessons. And I think our 20s and our 30s and probably our 40s, they're all just a second adolescence or a third or a fourth or fifth and onward, where we're repeating the same lessons, which can be really frustrating, but we have a little bit more awareness, or we take it a little less seriously, hopefully, or we bounce back a little bit quicker, hopefully. But one of those many lessons for me is like not trying to control how people perceive me, because of course we can't. And I think sometimes I look back at old work, like the book about journaling that I wrote, which is called Let It Out. And I'll like look at the cover of me, when I was like 24 in a flower crown, and I'm embarrassed, and I'm like, oh man, I wouldn't do it like that now. It wouldn't look like that now. But also, who cares? Like the content inside, I don't know. I haven't read it in years, but like I know it's about journaling, and I know that writing for emotional wellness is useful. So I'm glad I picked that, and not like could have gone either way. Like I said, like not something really esoteric and, and too bizarre.
Well, I think specifically to your book, it's like it meant something to you then, and it meant something to a lot of people then. And of course, you have evolved since that moment in time. And like, thank goodness we all evolve. And like, even if we could screenshot this moment in time in our lives, like, hopefully we look back on it 10, 15 years from now and we think, like, wow, I've evolved from there too. And to your point, every decade is going to have its lessons and its growing pains. And I think probably everyone can identify with certain themes that just seem to keep showing up in your lessons and in your growing pains. Like, I think there are just some lessons that keep revisiting us in new ways. But I, you know this about me. I like absolutely love a coming of age story. And it's why forever and ever, like my favorite shows are Dawson's Creek and Felicity. I just love to rewatch them because like these amazing coming of age stories. And as I was reading through Pivot, the zine, and reading all of these like moments in time in your life and in your journey, like over, your 20s, it really reads like a beautiful coming of age story. And I think that it's just such a cool way to encapsulate a really significant time in your life. Like how do you feel when you look at this collection of works and when you reflect back over the words that you wrote, but also like the experiences that you had that led you to writing those words?
Yeah, I think well, thank you. Thank you for reading it, and thank you for you're one of the only people who's read it, all the way through, because some of them
It's so good. Everyone's got to read it.
are essays that I had previously published in this column, maybe about 8 of them, and they don't exist anywhere online anymore, so I had to like find them in my email. And some of them were in a print edition of that magazine, such as the article you and I wrote. And 2 of them are just new that I didn't write them recently. I wrote them around the same time, but they were never published. And then I throw in an interview with someone in there because I had started doing a series within the Pivot column called Pivot Person, where I transcribed an interview with someone who was not in their 20s, but had their own coming of age story of sorts and like had a big pivot or a big transition and come out the other side of that. And I did a couple of those. So I picked one of them to include in the zine. And these stories were all written throughout really 2 years or so, with a couple outliers. Like one was written a few years earlier, and one of them was written at the very beginning of 2020. But other than that, it was like 2 years of my life. And so I guess I think about you reading it. And like I mentioned, there's one that we wrote together. There's one about hair that I talk about you in, and something that you had said to me and how that impacted me. And that one, obviously those two you remember, but outside of that, there's ones about relationships and people that you've heard all about and like supported me, what met, knew. And I cried when relationships ended, or when I learned lessons where I made mistakes and I felt horrible, and I called you, and you were the friend, are the friend. But especially throughout all of these stories, you were the friend who was there in real time. And I even like, I think probably made this joke to you and I sent it to you, like, don't even worry about reading it. You had to live it with me in real time. And so, I mean, I'm curious if you remembered a lot of this while you read it. I did. And as I like went through it and put it together, like there's a lot of moments where I'm like, I mean, I'm still, to be honest, by the time people hear this, it will be ready. But today I'm still putting things in a different order. And I'm like, I need to cut this. And I'm like, I need to actually stop doing that, because I've been like editing so much that I'm like editing the same word and then re-editing it and putting it back. I think I need to step away, but there are I meant to tell you this. There are a few mistakes I found in the version I sent you, and I want to change things. So I'm really not trying to be a revisionist historian here. Like I have to do a lot of like what we were talking about with like looking at old work and being like, that's so who I was then. And what is it? The Joan Didion line that she's like, stay on speaking terms with your past self, or what is it? It's something like that. Stay on good. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Yeah. And so, I mean, I think, like, to your point, it's good that we evolve, because if we didn't, we'd be stagnant. But what that means is that we're going to look back on versions of ourselves that we've evolved away from and feel a little bit uncomfortable or cringe. And I think that's okay. And you have to just allow for that. And I kind of leaned into that here. And this sort of tells the story of, like, this is what everything I know now. And this is kind of how I learned it. And these are a few of those stories and a few themes that came up in my work from my newsletter that I sent out, the topics I was talking about on this podcast that I started at the beginning of that decade and can continue now, and writing a newsletter for that exact amount of time as well. And I hope that I can learn new things and, unfortunately, continue to cycle through some of these lessons in new circumstances. But to kind of put it all together felt much like journaling. It felt cathartic in a way, to be like, oh, wow, okay, wow, I really did learn a lot. But then it also felt sort of painful to be like, oh man, I'm still, better. You know what I mean? Like, why am I still doing that? Because I can't believe I knew that all the way back then. And here I am living that out in a different way now. And so you have to just sort of laugh. And I don't know, it lets go of shame when you just share it, I think, or it can help. So yeah, it felt both cathartic and painful in many ways.
I think so many people, when they read these essays, are going to see parts of themselves reflected in them as well. And it's going to help them with maybe shame that they're holding on to from lessons that they feel like, wait, I know better. Why didn't I learn this? Or maybe they're in the middle of it and they feel really alone. And I think, well, as I was reading through it, it was so lovely to, number one, read your words and read your reflections of your very real life experiences, but also to remember the moments of, like, oh, we were talking about that on a blanket in Schiller Park, or oh, I
Mm-hmm.
remember we were like walking to get bone broth in New York City when you told me about this, or I remember where I was when, when you called me and like we were talking about this specific thing, like all those micro moments that were a part of you having these experiences so that you could reflect back on. Like, so many of those memories came flooding back to me. And to me, it reminded me that when someone is brave enough to reflect honestly on their life and on their experience or experiences, and then they're even more brave and bold and honest in putting that into words so that other people can connect with it and can see themselves reflected and can feel less alone and can just have a more robust look at the human experience. Like, it is such a gift that you're giving people. And I think when we read someone else's real experiences, but in writing in like a reflective form, it's so valuable to remember it. Like, a person had to live through a lot to get to a place where they could reflect on it and write about it. Like, there are a lot of hard moments. There are a lot of tears. There's a lot of growing pains. There's a lot of, needing to be with yourself. And it's such a gift when someone goes through moments like that and then is willing to share in the way that you have. So I just think it's going to be really, really powerful for people. And I think the biggest thing for me as I was reading over this, like as a collection, and there's so many like beautiful themes in this zine, right? Like about connection and vulnerability and self-worth and all of these amazing themes. But I think the thing that was so present throughout them all was sort of this dichotomy between the urge to like contract, and then you go through these experiences and you find permission to expand. And I think there is something that is very raw but hopeful in every single one of these essays that you're going to give to people, which is just very beautiful.
Oh, thanks, Sim. I mean, I think it's something that I learned, or I heard someone say, that I think I had to learn the hard way, that self-awareness is the first step to change, right? Like, you can't change unless you know what you need to change. And I'm pretty confident at saying I'm pretty good at that part, like self-awareness. I'm no problem. Like I'm journaling helps with that. Talking to friends helps with that. Therapy helps with that. That part, pointing out your ways you need to grow and being aware of it, that part, no problem. And that, that can take some time, but it's only the first step. It doesn't mean you've changed. It doesn't mean you've healed. It just means you're aware. And it's often more uncomfortable once you are aware, because then before you were in ignorance is bliss, like you didn't have to walk around knowing that you wanted something to be different, or that you have a bad habit or whatever, or a habit that you just want to shift. And I also thought that by becoming self-aware of something and then sharing it with you, with my therapist, or with someone I was close to, or in an essay that I publish, or a newsletter that I send out, or talking about it on the podcast, then that meant I was better and I was good, and everybody else is you're all out there living your life and I am better, and that is just not true. Like, just because I become so aware and I know why this happened, and I out the embarrassing story of how I gave everything away and then had nothing left, or how I over apologized and thought that could fix it and it didn't, or how my, making worshiping food and my controlling food and my body and vanity, like, holds me back. And yet here I wrote an essay about it. It doesn't mean I still don't have all of these same problems that I have to constantly shift and change and pivot, And anyway, I wish it did. I really wish just writing about it or saying it out loud was this magic solve, and it meant that it changed completely. But that's not really how it works. But I do think it is a step. And I do think what's cool about sharing it is that it can lead to exactly what you said, where other people can not feel alone while they're in process with something similar.
When you think about anyone who, wants to be able to read this, being able to read this, what makes you feel most excited about having this out in the world in this format, in this collection?
That's such a good question. And I'm going to sound like such an asshole, but I haven't really thought about other people other than you and like friends of mine reading it, because I really wanted to put this together for myself. Like, it was a really selfish activity, because here I was, complete twist in my plan, where I couldn't walk or drive and I needed so much help and I couldn't get around and I didn't leave the house for most days, and I needed to make something, and I couldn't work, and I was sort of just like, I need to practice what I preach a little bit, of like, let me just put one foot in front of the other and get some momentum and try something. And then as soon as I started to put it together, I came up with a list of lessons that I learned over that decade. And I realized that so many things that I read, that we read and would talk about, and people who I could relate to, that I looked up to around the time that we met and throughout the decade of my 20s, and still now, it just happened with Miranda July's new book, and hearing her talk about it, and just reading the first couple of pages and then hearing her talk about it, I sent like 6 texts of like, oh my God, this is blowing my mind. And I'm so, I just felt that same, like, it made me want to write. It made me want to read more. It like hit me hard, and I've had that happen so many times over my life, as because then I usually am like, oh my God, have you seen this? And I just need to like tell everyone about it and go down the wormhole. And that's kind of the way that my brain works, is pretty extremist, as you know. And when I came up with the themes from this, or in the introduction, I outlined, I don't even remember what the number ended up being, but like 30 some lessons that are just like one-liners that I learned the hard way, essentially. And then I kind of explain how I learned them through the pages that follow in the essays. And they are all things that I hope that people can, maybe one of them is something they're like, oh, that's a good line. Like, that's a good idea, not a good line, but like a good, maybe that will help me a little bit. Maybe that will help me in this situation I'm going through with my friend who's not texting me back. Like maybe that will help me in this crush that I have that I, can't seem to stop thinking about, or this project I'm working on, or feeling behind over here, whatever. And all of them won't resonate, but maybe one does or two do. And then that can be a snowball effect to make a situation and their life better, because I've had that happen to me from so many people that I've read or podcasts I've listened to, where just little pieces of advice or lessons that someone else learned the hard way that I get to maybe take a shortcut in. But I also think there aren't shortcuts. And I think I've had to learn by touching the hot stove several times and getting burned. And that's actually how we learn. I don't really believe in hacks or shortcuts, but I do believe in keeping going. And the only way to keep going is to have support and to feel less alone, even by people who you don't know, or you do know, or parasocially, who can just kind of be like, I'm there too, and it's okay, or I got to the other side, or I'm not on the other side, but I'm continuing. And there's a quote that I put on the front from this book that I really like. And it's something like, just because I'm older, I'm not wiser, but I know that I'm not wiser. So does that make me wiser, or something like that? And I think that's kind of it. It's like just being open to like, I don't maybe have the answer, but I do have these past experiences where I learned like talking less, or maybe being quiet there, maybe not doing anything, or maybe so that's something you've taught me, matching the energy. Like if someone's giving me this, instead of giving them everything I want to give them, I'm going to just try to like mirror what they're doing. These little things are so impactful. You've given me so many of them over the years.
Well, I agree with you that I don't believe necessarily in like shortcuts, but one line can change your life. You're reading a book, you read one line, and it's not that it's a shortcut, but it's like a moment. And I think sometimes one line in a book, one line in one of your essays, someone might read it and it's the moment that they needed. It could be the moment where they have awareness. You shared you are so good at self-awareness, and you are such a self-aware person. And I think not everyone has such a depth of self-awareness. Some people need support with that. Like maybe reading a line in one of these essays will give someone a moment of self-awareness, or will be a moment where they think, oh my gosh, I hadn't thought about it like that. Or, wow, this is exactly what I needed to hear. Or, oh, this feels like a sign for me to do this thing that I've been wondering if I should do. I really think that one line can change our lives in that way. And there's such power to words. And while it isn't a shortcut and no one can hack their way through life, I do believe that storytelling and sharing of experiences and sharing of wisdom, I think that's our nature as human beings. We learn that way. We're made to connect in that way. We're made to learn in that way. And I think that this is a modern version of getting to sit around a fire and share stories, which doesn't happen that much now, but like there are incredible things like your zine where people can read it. And it's that feeling of, oh, I'm learning from stories that this other human being is telling me.
Thanks, Sim. And yeah, I think somebody said the person who is your best teacher or mentor, coach, or advisor isn't the person enlightened, up on the mountain, the best in the world, the Olympian. It's the person just maybe 1 second ahead of you, or one step ahead of you, who can say, oh, watch out for that rock, like there's uneven pavement.
Yes.
And I feel like that often, people come to you, and you, in the work that you do with people, you are able to give them that, and you're able to, regardless of where they are in their lives, people look at you and you have this energy about you that is so nurturing, and that is so comforting, and that is so smart. You and I connect in so many ways and are different in so many ways. And I know the way you work with your clients and the way you work in groups and the way you teach your classes. Like it's evident in all of that, everything you just said, and what that perspective that you just shared there about how little things can be impactful. Like that's exactly what you do with people, and which is really cool. And I want you to tell people how they can do that, because you have a group program coming up, and I forgot to tell you when this is going to come out, but I'm pretty sure it's coming out before that. And if not, people can still work with you one-on-one after that, right?
Yes, yes. I have a 6-month one-on-one coaching program where I work with women to help them just create the relationship with themselves that they know that they deserve. And I've got a 10-week group coaching program that starts September 15th called The Way Out. That's for perfectionists. And then I have Unmeasured, which is my movement platform that is all about teaching you bar and helping you to explore, bar style movement in a way that also promotes a more intuitive relationship with movement and improved body image.
So everything that you do is golden. And I also think that if anyone relates to any of the topics that I talk about here that I struggle with, you are the person that I come to and who has helped me. And so and your work has helped me so much. And I love taking bar from you more than any other exercise in the world. So I couldn't recommend any of these more highly.
Katie, thank you so much. It's so fun to be here celebrating your new creation out into the world. And I think people are going to be so touched by your words.
Thank you. And you promise you'll come back. I know we're out of time, but we did not talk about the one that we wrote together at all. Maybe you can just tell me, do you remember, did you read that one back? Do you remember writing it?
Yes, I read it back. I remember writing it. And I have to say that when I was reading it back, I had this thought of when we created this essay and we got to work together. I remember it being a time, it sounds silly to say like content creation, but I remember it being a time in content creation where it felt like you could just have a really fun idea and you could go for it. It didn't feel
I
so much like
know.
there were these like trends and everyone's
I
like,
know.
plug their message into like whatever's trending. I feel like it was such a fun time where you could have an idea, you could have a thought, and it didn't have to plug into anything. You could just put it out there in the world. And the essay that we wrote was all we know about friendship we learned from the 90s. And as I was reading back through it, I was like, this was so fun to create.
I
Like
know. I had the same thought.
I loved it.
I know. And I really had no memory of like what was in it too. Like I was like, oh my God, no way. Like we went there, like, and I don't remember how we did it exactly. I think we went back and forth in a Google Doc, but I have no idea reading it who we were not in the same place. We didn't like, I know for sure we didn't sit down at a computer and write it together, although we did. I mean, maybe could have. I don't think so, right? I'm pretty sure we did it
No,
remotely.
I think we had a shared Google Doc and we're just like brain dumping ideas of things we saw in the 90s and sharing like what the lesson was from that time.
Yeah,
And
yeah, I think so too. But I had no idea from reading it which ones were yours and which ones were mine. I had no, did you? Because I was like, this could have been Simi, could have been me. Like it was felt so like if you and I were one and really wrote it.
I know my thought is as I'm reading through it, I'm like, I don't know. The two that I'm like most likely that I wrote were the one about Dawson's Creek and Clueless, only because those are like my favorites. But I'm like, you could have also written
But
those.
they're mine
You love
too.
Sex in
I
the
know.
City. Like, so I feel like maybe the Sex in the City one was yours.
Maybe. I don't know.
Who knows?
All of them, I had no idea. I truly had no idea. They were like, it could have gone either way. Like, and we'll never know. We'll never know.
We'll never know, but as I was reading through it, I just had this overwhelming smile on my face thinking about, wow, that was like such a fun time like creating. That was a really fun creative time.
Yeah, I know, and it is, this part's a little bleak, but it has changed so much, which is a bummer to end on. But you know what? Actually, Sim, you should listen to my episode from 2 weeks ago from when we were recording this with Christine Barbaro, the editor-in-chief of former editor-in-chief of Refinery 29 and the founder. And we talked about that exact thing about that time, because another thing that you and I share, we both published essays in Refinery 29 in this column that our friend Kelsey Miller made at the time. And I talked to her about that and about that time and compared to now. And it is really different. And I think that's another reason why I wanted to put these together in this zine, because I think Substack actually is where a lot of that stuff's happening now. I think that's just where this is, that sort of content that you were talking about. I think that's like, we can do a 90s, we can do that again in our Substack tomorrow. You know what I mean? Like, we can have a cool idea and do it that way, or, you know, we can make a zine, and that's kind of like where this is now. And that's where that's why I wanted to put it here, because in a way, that's just where I could put something like this now, you know?
Absolutely. I'm so glad that you made this. And I literally have that episode downloaded. I can't wait to go listen to it.
Oh, good. Well, I love you so much. Thank you for doing this. You'll come back, you promise?
Promise. I can't wait. I love you so much too. And thanks for having me.
Thank you. Thanks for listening. Bye. Thank you so much for listening all the way to the end. It really means so much. And like I said, if you want to get yourself a copy of the zine, you know what to do. The links to do so are all in the show notes. And I am just really grateful to Simi for her years of friendship, for recording this with me. And if you, obviously, you know how great she is now just from listening to that little bit, but hopefully you got the gist. But I'll reiterate, she's so incredible. So the links to everything she does will be in the show notes, and I highly recommend her group program that I think you can just squeak in with. I'm pretty sure it closes like today, so she'll probably let you in if you are really nice and ask. And you can also work with her one-on-one, and she has this brilliant movement program called Unmeasured, where you can do workouts with her on the computer over the internet, which is great because I used to be able to go to her bar classes in person, and I loved them so much. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you to Simi. My Substack link is in the show notes, and let us know if you listened. The zine is available, and it's not in chronological order, but it does tell a story the way I arranged them, and it's pretty exposing, I think, now that I read it in full. So yeah, it means a lot that I'm able to share this, and I'm kind of nervous. It's not even printed yet. I'm going to the printer tomorrow. It will be by the time you're hearing this, if all goes to plan. I mean, who knows? I could break another leg. Okay, I'm going to knock on wood. Thank you so much for listening all the way to the end. You're incredible for being here. Thank you to Jeremiah, who edits this podcast, and I will talk to you next week. Bye-bye.